PowerSchool is my learning management system and student information system. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn about an upcoming webinar about measuring what matters. Today is episode 236, Educating Kids for Life, Not for Tests, and is part 2 of the conversation I had recently with Pam Moran, superintendent of Albemarle County in Virginia. Now, last time in episode 231, we discussed education reform in Virginia and how they have been moving away from over-testing. But today we have 4 big, very interesting and different points. First of all, the challenge of helping new teachers who grew up in the multiple choice testing environment. Secondly, 4 examples of virtual reality programming in the classroom. Third, why creativity is important, and a little bit of an upsetting story from one of her middle school teachers about what testing actually was doing to harm the students in his classroom. And finally, why Pam believes a new renaissance in education is upon us. Enjoy.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
But I do think that one of the things that's we also have that's a real challenge, as some states are starting to emerge from the test them till you drop mentality that we lived in for 2 decades, and that is that we have a whole generation of educators that are now entering our classrooms as first and second grade teachers. That's the world they knew as students.
Oh, yeah.
And so for them, the multiple choice test is the test du jour because that's what they were accustomed to in terms of test prep and state testing. And so one of the things that we really, spend a lot of time doing is trying to help people unlearn some of what I think that we built into the system over time, that people just came to accept that, that the goal, the end in mind was educate kids for test. My perspective is that we should be educating kids for life, and that's life in the here and now, and it's life in the future. And you don't do that by putting all of your time and energy into educating kids for tests.
Yeah.
I watched recently, Vicki, a young woman in one of our high schools. We've been putting some virtual reality spaces into sort of test bed. What does virtual reality have to offer to the learning process? And, and I'm kind of technology agnostic in some ways. I like technology. I was a science educator, so I'm pretty comfortable and confident, using technologies of all kinds, although the kids have really surpassed me when you start to get some of the newer tools that they're using, particularly as part of their maker work. But I'm not uncomfortable around it. It doesn't scare me. But what I saw recently were 3 kids that were using VR technology, and the stories are a little different. One young man who is autistic, is on the spectrum, was taking us for a tour of favorite places in the world that he had visited and telling us why. And it's my understanding that his communicative skills as a result of immersion in VR really have accelerated.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. And so he was there that day. They were doing kind of an open house to share how different kids were using technology. Another young woman had actually created inside VR a sort of a story that around Beowulf. You can't get much more traditional in terms of English canon than Beowulf in the high school.
Yeah.
But she had turned it into something that was pretty fascinating. A third kid was using a VR technology that allowed her to design clothes. She has a real interest in fashion, would love to be in the fashion industry. She's in there, she's got a mannequin, and she's doing this amazing, almost ballet-like series of motions. And we were able to watch her on a screen where it was being projected, what she was building, the process of her building a dress on this mannequin. And I just was like, oh, wow, this is just beyond anything I could imagine. Then they put the headset on me and send me into the underworld of the Great Barrier Reef. And I feel like that I have left the world and have entered this sort of marine space where I'm seeing, everything and anything that you might find there swimming by. And I'm thinking to myself, kids can get an immersive experience that takes them places that you could never envision in a 2D movie or in images in a slideshow or a PowerPoint or, in any way, shape, or form, a book, that they truly you become a part of the environment. And so one of the things that we're trying to figure out is, where does that technology fit? That's not something that, when you're in a testing world, it's hard for school districts to really take the risk to say, we're going to try out some things. We're going to prototype. We're going to kind of test bed and figure out where this fits, because it's not something that's going to be tested. The fact that Virginia's really backing off of state testing in high school, I think is going to open doors for teachers to explore learning in ways that we haven't probably seen since the late 80s or 70s in the United States, where there was a lot more freedom on the part of teachers to be the creatives that they are. You are that, you're a risk taker, but that's not something that we've really reinforced inside the education world. But boy, I tell you, it's something that, if we want our kids to be prepared for life in this 21st century after high school, if we don't help them really maintain that sense of curiosity and flexibility and that sense of that I can learn anything I need to learn to be successful in life, if our kids don't leave us with that, then we've done an incredible disservice. And I think that we've had really almost 2 decades in Virginia where our kids have been held in thrall, and our teachers, in terms of being able to exercise that creative juice that lets them really explore learning in a way that gets at, passions of teachers. Not every teacher is passionate about every aspect of some of the things that they teach in history or every book that's on the list in English. But if teachers can find spaces to be able to bring that passion and that curiosity and that love of learning that I think most teachers have deep down, it turns kids on. And then when they can release the kids to be able to explore as well. One of the saddest stories I had from a few years ago is when I had a teacher say to me that taught middle school. It used to be that our kids took a 6th grade history test, a 7th grade history test, an 8th grade history test. And 6th grade history was the history of the United States up through the Civil War. And then 7th grade history was Reconstruction through current times. And then 8th grade was civics and economics. And they took tests every year, multiple choice tests. This teacher said to me, Pam, one of the toughest things I had, knowing the pace of coverage that I have to move through to get kids prepared to take a test that gets labeled as either fail or proficient, is when I had kids say to me, gee, we want to stop. Can we talk more about why people fought the Civil War? And he said, all I could think in my head is, do I have time to stop and have that conversation? And now, because the state has gifted the time back to teachers to not have to be responsible for teaching to a test in 6th grade and 7th grade in history, our kids are getting some time back, as our teachers are, to be able to explore learning and to take a side road, not just stay on the main highway. And I kind of like that.
So Pam, you actually sound excited.
I do get excited, and it's kind of wild because, as you've heard that this is going to be my last year in the superintendency. And primarily one of the things that's a real driver for me is that I have a husband who's fully handicapped, and I've got to kind of reevaluate priorities in my life in terms of needs that I need in terms of family time. But and the superintendent job, is a job that's 24/7. But one of the things I've said to people is that I would love to be able to work in education for another 30 years. And my mom, who's down in South Carolina, is 96 years old, can still touch her toes and carry on a conversation about every golfer that's in the top 10 in the world and stays up with the news, and we can argue politics and everything else. And so I sometimes think, well, maybe I'll get those kind of years if I got her X chromosome.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I think that education is about to hit a new renaissance. And I'd love to be able to spend another 30 years watching the next phase unfold. I think that technologies are certainly a part of it. But Vicki, I also think that one of the things that's really critical in my mind is that if you had talked to me probably around 2007, 8, I can't remember when Clayton Christensen wrote the book about how, we were going to see this flip to, kids walking out of schools and becoming virtual learners and staying at home and doing everything, kind of virtually in terms of learning. And, and it looked like, oh, wow, that could really happen. But as I started, spending more time talking to high school students about what they really value, what I heard from them is that when high school kids have a teacher or teachers with whom they have really great relationships, who they value, respect, regard, who they engage with, they love that. Yeah. They love time with peers. And I think that despite the fact that technologies are going to change and evolve and what kids will be using in 10 years will look really different than anything we have maybe today, the reality is that humans at the core of who we are people who are we are social community people. And I think we like to learn together. I think we like to socialize together. And I like to think that as teachers evolve practice and sustain and even maybe enhance and deepen their understanding of how important it is to build relationships with young people that are authentic and real. And kids have experiences working on work with peers that's really important to them, that schools may become even stronger and more powerful as spaces of learning than they ever have been in history. And so, I think that's, I'm pretty optimistic about the future of education, and I'm optimistic about the young teachers I see, and the young leaders that I see. I feel like that, as I'm exiting out, as others that are in kind of my age band are exiting out, we're going to be leaving education in really good hands with this younger generation. The millennials are now, they're not so young anymore, and they're not in our schools anymore. I think they're going to be great leaders. I think they're going to be very much focused on social good, on collaboration, on understanding that experience is really, really important for them, and it's important for kids, that it's not the resources that make the biggest difference, it's the relationships. And I really love that.
On January 31st, join a free webinar about preparing students for success and measuring what matters. Jared Cotton, a superintendent from Virginia, will be sharing on that webinar. Just go to coolcatteacher.com/what matters and learn more. I use and enjoy the PowerSchool Learning Management System to help blend my classroom and measure what matters. Check out PowerSchool and their unified classroom today.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.